Hello, I'm Tim Arvalina, deacon here at the Red Door community of the Church of the Advocate. It's the fifth Sunday of Easter, and our story continues today in the Gospel of John, the 14th chapter. It's the night that Jesus is to be betrayed and handed over to the Romans to be crucified the following day. The disciples are clearly terrified as to what's going to happen next. Will they survive? Why is he doing this? What hope do they have in their lives? And Jesus says to them, don't let your hearts be troubled. I have a place that I'm taking you. You just have to follow the way. And Thomas, always Thomas, he says, Master, we don't know even where you're going. How would we know the way? And he says, Thomas, I am the way. And Philip, who's been with him nearly since the beginning, says to him, if you could just show us the Father, then we would know the way. And he shakes his head. Philip, have I been with you for 3.5 years, and you can still say to me, show us the Father? If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Now, what does Jesus mean by this? It's kind of mysterious, isn't it? Well, I think about it right now, and we're in this great time of uncertainty and, yes, indeed, terror. We have found our country shut down because of the pandemic. We've seen the whole world, indeed, shut down because of the pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of people have perished in these last few weeks. And people are understandably terrified. And into this steps the calm, quiet figure of Jesus who says, I am the way. Follow me. Now that's hard to do because we have grown up in a world in which we look to wise people to write down instructions. You can go on the internet, on YouTube, and you can find out how to make a volcano cake in your microwave, or how to make sourdough bread, or how to build a house in the backwoods, how to do anything. And there are lists of instructions, step 1 and step 2 and step 3. Do these things, and then you will have your reward. And Jesus has come to tell us a different way. Not a way based on rules, but a way based on trust. It's a hard concept for us Westerners who are so used to having things written down and spelled out for us. And yet, he says, don't let your hearts be troubled. That's easy for us to hear, but not so easy for us to do. We are afraid, if we're going to be honest, of death, of uncertainty, of what happens to our families and those we love, what happens to all of the things that we have acquired in our lives. No matter how little we have, it's ours, isn't it? But Jesus' calm, quiet voice is to say, I have things for you. They are not things in the sense you think of as things. It's a way. It's a way of calmness and serenity. It's a way of truth and a way of life. And I'm that way. And our first reading today came from the Acts of the Apostles, and it's the last and tragic part of the story of Stephen. Stephen was one of 7 of the first official servants of the church, the order of which became deacons. So I'm kind of partial to him. In Luke's story of Stephen's trial and confrontation with the religious leaders of his time, Stephen has told the whole story of the faithlessness of the religious leaders to take care of the way that had been set before them. The religious leaders are infuriated by what Stephen has said. and they rush towards him and pick up stones to stone him. But he keeps on. He looks up into the sky and says, I see Jesus lifted up. Well, it hasn't been that long since they participated in the horrible act of murdering Jesus of Nazareth. And they rush on him and stone him to death. And at the very end, as he takes his last breath, he says, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. That's what Jesus is trying to tell us in John's gospel. Just let him receive us. Step onto the way. Don't be looking for the religious instructions of how to do that. Just trust one foot, followed by the other, along the path that will be revealed to you as you walk it. I'm reminded of the opening verse of the ancient Chinese poem, what we now call the Tao Te Ching, written by a long ago Chinese bureaucrat for the kings, the emperors of China, on the way that they were to follow. And the word Tao in that ancient Chinese language in which the Tao Te Ching was written means the way. The opening verse says, the way that can be described, the Tao that can be described, is not the eternal Tao. And it reminds me of what Jesus is saying to Thomas and Philip and the rest of the disciples. Look, there's not going to be a set of rules that I'm going to give you. You have to trust in me. Just take the first step. Follow. I will show you the way, and there are rewards for you. What is that way? Well, that way can be summed up in what he has said over and over and over again. Love. Caring for others. That's what we do here at the Red Door community. We're caring for others. And for those who oftentimes are not cared for by anyone else, we're here because we're taking one step at a time to walk along the way. That way of hope, that way of truth, that way of life. It's the only way we know. It's the only way we can go. Because it is the way. Jesus, that way, is the one calling us to follow him into the unknown and to trust that he is there to guide us and to care for us and to receive our spirits. Amen.